be doing this workshop today. As she told me, and as I think is great, this is a participatory workshop. So as I said a little bit earlier, but if you just joined us, feel free to put your camera on when you're interacting, or to turn it off, you know, in between, but it is nice just to be able to see each other a little bit. So I'll be putting my camera on and off and on throughout the session. And we hope that we can also like get to know each other a little bit better and our advocacy work through this workshop. So just a little bit about Markaz Hamla for those of you that are joining us for the first time. Markaz Hamla is a Palestinian digital rights organization. We work throughout historic Palestine on different issues related to digital rights. So this includes capacity building for individuals, activists, and organizations, and how to engage in digital advocacy, as well as doing advocacy to different technology companies and international governmental bodies and states. I'm sure many of you are very familiar with advocacy work, so I won't go too much into depth, but I do also want to just mention that we are also having our annual Palestine Digital Activism Forum, which some of you may have seen and joined in the past. This year it will be held again in March. And we're going to be trying out a new interactive way of holding a virtual conference. So while we're using Zoom today, we also will invite you next year to use a different kind of platform for engagement in workshops and conferences. And yeah, I just wanted to get a little plug in for that. And also just remind you that if you haven't signed up, we have a newsletter in Arabic and English. We don't send out a lot, but you can sign up on our website and be updated about new reports and events we have. And I will just drop our website here in the chat box. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us. And I am going to pass over the Zoom mic to Miriam.
Thank you, Allison. Thank you everyone for joining as well. I do have a tendency to speak a little fast, which isn't very convenient with the internet, especially in Palestine, where it's very choppy, to say the least. So if at any point you feel like I am going too fast or there does need to be some clarification, go ahead and stop me. And I'll be more than happy to provide the clarification. So to speak a little about myself and why I'm here and why is Miriam speaking to us and what's the added value in that is, so I got engulfed in media a little bit by mistake. It was initially through my activism when I saw that mostly Western journalists do not cover Palestine very well. They do not give it the justice. There is bias that is concealed under the emblem of objectivity, as we all know. Oh, we have to be objective, but we know it's a bias that's underpinned by a lot of factors. One of it is politics, obviously. So as I became more engulfed in that, I also began writing my own. I began doing more reporting as a freelance journalist with news outlets. And then I moved more towards political analysis. And I've written for the New York Times. I've worked with The Guardian. I've worked with the BBC and other outlets as well. Recently, I've been incorporating more in regional media because this is a shortcoming of ours, that we tend to focus on Western media and international media, thinking it gives us a little bit more visibility. So the crux of the workshop today really is to how to overcome that, how to give Palestine a little bit more visibility, but at the same time remaining true and just to the integrity of journalism and media and communications as a whole. So before I do begin, and I believe we have around 30 participants, because I do prefer interactive, I do prefer participatory interactions, if it's okay to kind of introduce who you are and maybe any association or organization you're affiliated with and why you're here. So it's just a very brief introduction. I think, Allison, maybe you can facilitate this.
Yeah, definitely. And also, actually, I do really want to ask people if they can just share, like, in 2-3 sentences, what's your experience with international advocacy?
Yes.
As a part of that. So I can start, I guess. So I'm Allison. I do the international relations work at Markaz Hamle. I'm not a Palestinian, but I've been working with Palestinians for almost, I guess, 10 years now. And my experience with advocacy is similar to Miriam. I didn't come to the work of advocacy thinking when I grow up I'll be an advocate, but through my activism, I really saw how Palestinians were, as Miriam said, portrayed without their own voices in the media and with a lot of bias under the guise of being not biased. And I really wanted to work with Palestinians themselves. I think we need to just mute the participants for the time being, I guess. I don't have the power to do that, but Munia, just maybe if you can make sure that the other participants are muted. Okay, great. So anyways, yeah, so I started working communicate with the press, very grassroots, starting in Nabi Saleh, for example, a lot of my early work. So that's me. And can we now go, I'm just gonna go down the list here. So, oh, not everyone has a name listed. So I see someone 6CV82A. Would you, oh, that's you, Miriam. So I'm gonna make the next person. So Ilya, Horbia.
Yes. Hello.
Hi. Oh, I think you're muted, Ilya.
Yeah, oh, you're on mute.
Yes, I'm mute.
Oh, there you go. Great.
إليا لسه مش سامعينك.
هيك مش سامعيني كمان؟
هلا سمعناك.
اوكي.
Now we could hear you.
Cool.
I'm not sure we can hear you, Elia.
Me?
Yeah, Elia, we were just wanting to have an introduction from you. Are you having trouble with?
Okay. No,
yeah.
I was just connecting it's giving me so many notifications. My name is Ilya. I'm a producer with AJ Plus and Jazeera. I'm Palestinian originally, but now I'm based in Qatar since 2 years.
Okay, great. And your experience with advocacy, international advocacy?
I think most of my work is related to journalism, more than advocacy. But I used to work with campaigns and local campaigns.
Okay, great. All right, I'll just go with who's on my screen next. So Tala Al-Sharif. Tala, can you unmute yourself? Okay, I guess I'll just move on and come back to Tala. So Wal, Wael El-Zari.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I am Wael El-Zari. I am a Palestinian. I live in Algeria. And about my experience with advocacy. So I work as a director for the Palestinian Land Studies Center, which is a center which is working to defend the Palestinian rights. We work in the field of cultural, environmental, and political Palestinian rights. So that's it.
Great, thank you. Al-Rawad Society.
What?
Yes, good morning. My name is Abdel Fattah Abu Sroor. I am founder and director of Al-Rawad Cultural and Arts Society in Aida Refugee Camp, Bethlehem. So I am Palestinian. I was born in Aida Refugee Camp. I am more a theater practitioner, so a playwright, director, and actor. And we tour a lot internationally to show our version of our stories and histories and narrate our own stories. And it is important to face the challenge with the international media brainwashing and the stereotyping on one side. And on the other side, allow them to see who we are and what we are and our point of view of our stories and history. And allow our young people to see normal life in free countries and dream of Palestine of tomorrow and not the Palestine they made for us. And also make everybody understand that we are not a humanitarian cause. We are a political cause, and we are not poor because we are lazy or don't have resources, that we are put into the poverty by this illegal occupation, which deprives us from the right to circulate freely, to import, to export, to fall in love even with whoever we want, with this segregation between Palestine 48, Jerusalem, Gaza, the West Bank, the world. And so we need partners. We not need charity makers to throw some crumbs on the table and say they have helped these poor, miserable people. This is more humiliating than the occupation itself. So this is our point of view. And the other point is the right of return for Palestinian refugees. Also for us, it is primordial. We are not asking for charity. It is our right. We reclaim it. Whether we want to practice it or not, this is another issue. But it is not Israelis or even the Palestinian Authority or whoever to say it's not realistic.
Great, thank you so much. All right, I'm just going to move on here to Milena Ansari.
Hi, good morning all. I'm Milena Ansari, the International Advocacy Officer at Al-Damir Prisoner Support and Human Rights Association. So I believe like the work of international advocacy fits perfectly with my position, as we're used to working on advocacy for prisoners and the situation of the Palestinian people on an international level. So I'm looking forward to this lecture.
Great, thank you. Rua Abdo.
Hi, good morning to all. I am from an organization called the Masira Fund Organization. We support the people of disability of the Arab society in Israel. We are interested on this field of the international advocacy as we believe in the rights of these less people that have less conditions than better conditions than others. And we'd like always to keep the transparent, as we are a fund that we support them, we'd like to keep the transparency to our funders and to keep it always open and believe in our message to that we support us and at the end support these people. So hopefully to get the right information from this presentation. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. The next person is Maysara.
Hello everyone, this is Maysara from Gaza, and my work is a journalist. My experience with advocacy that I am write success stories about who works here in Gaza as in economy companies or something like this for everyone. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next, maybe Hassan Jadeh.
Hi everyone, I'm Hassan from Concept Technologies. It's a private company in Jerusalem and Ramallah. I participated in many trainings, or I give trainings with Hamle on technical side of the digital media, how to reach audiences, how to make.
I think we lost your voice, Hassan. We don't hear you.
To ask about how Palestinians can interact with the US media and such topics. So I don't have experience in advocacy or international advocacy, but interested in media monitoring and how can we analyze what's happening on the maybe US media or international media regarding Palestinian issue. So that's it, and
thank you very much. Fatih? Fatih, would you like to introduce yourself? Okay, we will come back to Fatih. Hazem Khattab? Hazem? Okay, no problem. We will come back to Hazem. Amani Abu Awad?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Amani. I am Palestinian based in Bethlehem. So my experience with advocacy, well, I work as a media and communications officer at the YWCA of Palestine. So we issue a lot of statements on the different occasions throughout the year that are pertaining to Palestine and the Palestinian cause. So I work on the statements, and I've also represented Palestine in many on many occasions, and I've seen international international forums, and I have witnessed the misconceptions that people have about Palestine, because all what they know about Palestine is through media, and I know that international media has played an important role in creating these misconceptions. So that's why I'm here. I think international advocacy is very important, and I'd like to learn how to build on the skills I have in that field.
Great, thank you very much, Mani. Mace Kuchel.
Yes, hi everyone. I apologize in advance about any cutoffs in the speaking, because the internet here is not the best, but I'm sure you all know that. My name is Mais Khail, and I'm a content writer by profession, and I currently work with Build Palestine, an organization that aims to connect global supporters with social impact projects here in Palestine and social innovation in Palestine. And my work is not directly related to advocacy, but in a way it is, because I do handle most of the communications here at Build Palestine, the content development, writing all of the stories that come out. So I'm hoping to better learn how to better reach international audiences, and what tools to use to better convey our stories as Palestinians.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Mais. Hiba Hamarshe.
Hi, I'm Hiba Hamarshe, the Media and Communication Officer in Ad-Damir for Supporting Prisoners and Human Rights Association. So my work is related, or my work is in media and communication, but also it's related to advocacy. I don't have this experience in advocacy, but since it's related to each other, and you know, the media, it's or the platforms, media platforms, it's more important to like to work for the for this, but I think that the media, it's more needed in the advocacy work, because it reflects all the association work to into campaigns or things like that. So I'm looking forward to learn from this lecture. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Hiba. Firas Najoom.
Yes. Hello.
Hello.
How are you? I hope all of you are fine. I am Firas Najoom. I am a member in the GUPT, General Union for Palestinian Teachers. We are the only represented for all teachers in Gaza and in the West Bank. We were elected in the last 2 years, and I am working now as General Secretary for International Affairs in the GUPT. We have many relationships with all the unions in all countries. Before 1 month, we make a progress and a program with international education, and we were between 30 countries, and we get a refund from them to teach teachers and to learn them on the e-learning because of the COVID-19, as all of you know. We have many relationships with all unions around the world. As I told you, we represent all teachers in the West Bank and in Gaza, and I am happy to be with you today.
Thank you. Shukran Firas. Jodi Harfia? Jodi? Okay, we'll just move on. Tala Al-Sharif, or did we introduce already Tala? Maybe. Okay, I'm going to move on to Jaylak and Ali Hamdallah.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks you for the invitation. I'm Ali, a coordinator for Jerusalem Legal Aid Center. Do you get my voice?
Yes.
Okay. We in JLAC, we work, our focus is in defending Palestinian rights to lands. And also we established the campaign for returning the Palestinian martyrs' bodies from the Israeli occupation in 2008. And we have also this campaign for persons with disabilities. We launched in 2016. As I mentioned, our main focus is to defend Palestinian rights, especially on the marginalized areas and Area C, right of property of lands. Also, like we defend the confiscating equipment cases, and also defend the cases like settlers violence and else. We recently discussed that the horizon of using internal legal channels to defend Palestinian rights, like had been under a heavy blockade. So we established an international advocacy unit in our office, or an international advocacy team. And I think this webinar or training comes in time that we are improving our efforts. I'm happy to be here and looking forward to learn from you how to increase our visibility abroad Palestine, and how to improve and develop our content. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ali. Okay, let's see. Suhail Halile. Suhail.
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
How are you doing? My name is Suhail Khaliliya. I work with the Applied Research Institute, Jerusalem, REAJ. What we do basically as part of what the institution do actually is we monitor all what is related to Israeli activities and violations in the occupied Palestinian territories. We document and report on what's happening on our website and to special foreign representatives during a quarterly meetings that we have with them on a regular basis. We report that through PowerPoint presentations where we give them a visual of what's happening on the ground in terms of political and geographical changes. And we also communicate with local, regional, and international media through interviews that we do on a regular basis, actually on a daily basis, especially locally, to report and comment on what's happening here in the occupied Palestinian territory. What we like to see, or what I say, is as Palestinian and as, you know, through the years that we worked, it's hard not to see or miss that our advocacy as Palestinian is pretty much limited. Yes, we have lots of support on the international arena. Yes, we see many demonstrations. However, we are not getting the support or where it counts. That means on the political level, on the influential level. We are I think we are too soft when it comes to advocacy. We are too polite, if the word, you know, is right, but we are too polite. We are not a state yet. So I think we have the right to be more aggressive in our advocacy toward the Palestinian issue. So that's it. I'm not gonna say anything more.
Great, thank you, Suhail. Iyad Barghouti.
Good morning, Sabah al-Khair. I'm Iyad Barghouti. I'm from Akka, in the historical Palestine. I'm a writer and a campaigner. I work also with Hamle in a lot of projects. I'm as a trainer in campaigning. I think it's a very important topic for everyone that is working on campaigning for Palestine, and especially for Palestinian NGOs, and especially on facing the systematic Israeli incitation against the Palestinian as a nation and against the Palestinian civil society. So I heard also about Maryam, and that she is Shatra, and I want really to hear her and to learn from her. And يعطيك العافية.
شكرا إياد. All right. Taki Sabah. Taki. Okay. Zaid Ali.
Yeah, good morning. Zaid Ali. I coordinate digital diplomacy for the PLO Department of Public Diplomacy and Policy, which is a completely new division in government agencies, which involves digital diplomacy, advocacy, media monitoring, etc. I hope you're all familiar with our social media footprint, and I'm looking forward to learn from everyone here. Thank you.
Great, shukran ya Zaid. Yara, Auda. Yara, we don't hear you. Sorry, Yara, we don't hear you. Maybe you can chat to us. Okay, while we wait to see if maybe you can fix your mic or chat, I will move on to Manal Owais. Manal? Okay. Is there anyone that I've missed for the introductions who's present now who'd like to introduce themselves? All right. Going once, going twice, gone. We finished introductions in record 30 minutes. Okay. Let's jump into the workshop. It seems we have like a lot of different experience, a lot of good campaigning. I mean, I'm sure Miriam will tell you advocacy is in a lot of different ways, and advocacy really is for everyone. So, you know, it's good to have the different experiences in the room. I'm sure we'll learn a lot from each other, and of course from Miriam. So Miriam, I turned the Zoom mic to you. Oh, we have one more introduction here. Great. From,
I wrote it down just because we took a lot of time just introducing ourselves.
Yeah.
That's why I wrote it down. My name is Fadia Saad. I work at Palestinian Youth Association for Leadership and Rights Activation by Alara. I am a project coordinator. We are working with the Palestinian youth on empowering Palestinian youth to advocate their rights in both local and international communities. So advocacy is the core of our business. So that's why I'm looking forward to this session. I talked too fast, just to make it short.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Miriam?
Okay, thank you. Fadia, you're right. It does take long, but it is one of the more important parts of this workshop. When I was, called on to do it, I said it needs to be interactive. And I will be starting a PowerPoint just to let everyone know. I do know that webinars get so boring sometimes, and we're just like, okay, yalla, let's get to the point. But this is one of the important lessons, I think, in how long this takes, is that advocacy and media work, a lot of it is grunt work. It's the hard details that you have to prepare to be successful. So we have to go through this. One of the reasons I wanted everyone to introduce each other is because one of the shortcomings in Palestinian advocacy efforts is lack of coordination, and it is lack of communication across the organizations themselves, because we're competing for resources, we're competing for funding, we're competing for visibility, we're competing for attention. And so it's very important to know who's here, one, to create a safe space, and two, is to know who you can reach out to. So as everyone was speaking, I was taking down my own notes to know in the future if I ever wanna, speak about culture in Beit Lahem, I'm gonna go to Aida at Ruwad. So it's establishing the connections. This is the number one key to any successful advocacy efforts. So that's why this is important. I am going to do a PowerPoint presentation, like I said. It does get boring. So feel free to, if you want to take a break as we do this. But do you see the screen or do you see the video right now?
We see the screen.
Amazing. Okay. So we're going to be speaking about media, Palestine, and visibility. The focus of it is not how to show what our story is. It's how to redefine Palestine, right? Yani, a lot of the things I heard was about the stereotypes, the cliches, the garnering support. So that means redefining Palestine. And in order to do that, we have to stop relying on the journalists themselves to redefine it. It's up to us to create our narrative. It's up to us to disseminate it and how to disseminate it. And this is part of the visibility. This is where quality over quantity matters. Yani, if you have 10 articles, okay, published in the New York Times, published in The Guardian, published in CNN, but all of them are saying the same story, then it doesn't matter. If you have one really good feature in a lesser known news site, let's say Telesur, that might establish a different snowball effect for advocacy efforts, right? It can become a reference point for you. So we need to speak about these things and we need to tackle these things and we need to exercise patience. We are very impatient as Palestinians in terms of advocacy. This isn't something you can measure in a week, a month, a year. This is something that is measured in 5 years, in 10 years. So we have to have a foresight in terms of the visibility we want and what kind of visibility. So please, Yani, keep that in mind as we go through this, because I would like to go into discussions afterwards. So the overview of this workshop is we want to discuss our purpose. طب ليش إحنا بدنا advocacy, ليش بدنا stories? And I hope everyone here also يعني Arabic speaks Arabic from what I assume. We want to discuss dynamics. We want to discuss how to pitch and how to write, because just because you want your story out doesn't mean you don't need to know how to write like a journalist or write like an advocacy officer. And then we have to ask, what is our story? Are we Palestinians اللي مسخمين و they're just being attacked all the time? Or is there something more? And this is where we start redefining. So we discuss all of this and then we ask, okay, what is in our way? If we are doing what we have to do, why is it still not creating change? So this is the overview of the workshop. And please feel free to stop me and ask me to focus on anything in specific, because no matter how much we try, I can't give an exhaustive list of how to do it. So in order to achieve higher presence in the media, which can create more advocacy efforts, and it comes as an important part of advocacy, 2 questions are very important. 1, before you pitch any story, you want to ask, what is my purpose? And then 2, what are the contextual dynamics that are happening and taking place? So our purpose, when you're asking, what's the purpose of my story? I was solicited a lot of times to cover stories by organizations in order to give it visibility. But the first question I ask is, okay, well, what's the purpose of this? Why should I engage media in this? What does it achieve beyond Palestine? And this is how I start framing my message. So one of our shortcomings is we don't know what our messaging is. We don't know how to explain, hey, today I'm going to be speaking about the climate effects of tear gas in Palestine, not just on Palestinians, but its effect on environmental change globally. So you ask, what will my message achieve? Okay, my message here, it highlights the travesty of the utilization of tear gas on Palestinians. Aida, case in point, being one of the places with the highest usage of tear gas on a global level. And then there's the climate change, in that if Israel keeps employing these quote unquote non-lethal weapons, okay, sure, maybe they're non-lethal and we know we have documentation proving otherwise, but let's go with the argument. Always go with the argument. Don't try to refute it. Say, okay, It's a non-lethal weapon. But let's look at its impact long-term. It will not just harm Palestinians, it's going to harm the globe, because in the end, we're all connected. And this is how you begin framing your message, from taking it from being on the offense or the defense and turning it into the conversation, turning it into the debate that it is. You're contributing to the debate. Don't look at it as أنا بدي أزت المايك and walk out. No, look at it as, how am I contributing to a larger debate? What is my purpose? And then you want to ask, well, why is it important to promote it in this platform? If I'm talking about technology, okay, there's no point for me to pitch the story to the BBC, which focuses on politics. If I'm talking about the economy, I'm better off seeking the Financial Times or the Wall Street Journal instead of Al Jazeera, for instance. So these are the questions you have to ask and answer before saying, I want to create more advocacy. And this is where your niche comes in, right? For places like Damir, for places like JLAC, for places that focus on the quote unquote controversial stories, you're better off seeking advocacy, not necessarily in the mainstream media, but through other organizations and institutions that have visibility on their website. And this is where you begin collaborating, and you ask, why is it important to promote it within that platform? If Damir مثلا and the Prisoners Association works more with organizations globally that focus on political prisoner rights, you are likely to reach decision makers that are involved in that on a global level. So you have to understand that media is not the CNN, is not the New York Times, is not the journalists aspect, right? And then this brings us to the second question. What are the contextual changes that are taking place for that platform's audience? So the CNN Halla, or a couple of months ago, was focused on American politics. That was case in point, that's it. We are talking about Trump, we are talking about Biden, we are talking about American voters. So for you to pitch a story about an archaeological site that's being taken over by settlers is not gonna go. And if you are successful in publishing it, a story, or getting it visibility, you're not going to get the same impact that you would have if you promoted an angle that resonates more with American politics. So an example would have been, okay, Anna, right now, I work on gender issues, right? And you want to promote a certain aspect about the oppression of women through the occupation, or the oppression of women in Palestine as a society. Start framing it in how it is linked to the American politics. How does Trump winning or Biden winning impact Palestine? And how does Palestine impact the elections themselves? We have this, it's like a Palestinian exceptionalism, right? We focus on, لا إحنا الفلسطينيين, everyone has to help us. No, that it doesn't work. It hasn't worked. It's not gonna work. We need to move beyond it. We need to look, where does Palestine engage as an actor? So we keep saying people give us stereotypes and cliche. Okay, let's take agency back. That means we have to move beyond saying, well, help us, showcase our story. Go further, push yourself further. It's uncomfortable and it's more difficult, but push yourself further. How does Palestine impact American politics? Maybe the links, the discourse that certain candidates use, for instance, Biden on Palestine, Trump on Palestine, impacts American voters. Speak to American voters. Speak to them from your perspective as an agent of change, not just someone who has things done on them. This is one of the common mistakes that we do as Palestinians and as advocacy workers. We just emphasize our victimhood. We emphasize our passive engagement, And yes, there are barriers in front of us, but also let's not kid ourselves. We're completely engaged and engulfed in the world. So let's highlight that. And it shows you what you're offering the context. When you keep hearing the world saying to Palestinians, well, we need you to do this for us, and we need you to do that for us, and we need you to be more nonviolent, or we need you to be more diplomatic in the political sphere, you're going to say, no, we don't want to. So why are you asking the same? So you need to reframe what it is you're trying to promote. So how do you go about this? How do you understand the contextual dynamics? How can I become an active agent? Moving beyond the Palestinian exceptionalism, Palestine, okay, has become a global known cause. I don't know if you're familiar with the interview with Mahmoud Darwish, where he says to an Israeli journalist, we're lucky that you're the ones occupying us because it gives us more visibility. So if you compare Matalan Palestine to Kashmir, or Palestine to what's happening in Guatemala, it has a lot more visibility. It's what that visibility is. That's why I say quality over quantity is what matters here. So we cannot establish solidarity or mobilization and change until we move beyond, we are not the center of the world. Let's humble ourselves. We need to humble ourselves. Yes, what we are going through as a colonial dynamic is atrocious, it is terrible, and it's about time it ends. But let's move a little beyond. So you have to begin asking within your organizations, within your peers, what is Palestinian exceptionalism? How do we contribute to that? And what is the negative impact? وكل حدا has different answers. Someone working in culture has a different answer. Someone working with prisoners has a different answer. Palestinians are not the only ones that can offer beautiful dabke dance and amazing food. Palestinians are not the only ones with political prisoners. So we need to restructure the narrative. And this means moving beyond the statistical evidence trap. A lot of times when we're trying to get, did anyone want to say something? Okay. A lot of times when we're trying to get attention, we begin with the statistics. 100 people were killed today, 300 were killed yesterday, 400 were injured, there's 5,000 prisoners. There is 400 child prisoners. Since 1967, 20% of the male population has been imprisoned. I ran out of breath. أنا تعبت وأنا عم بحكي وبفكر. I got tired. And none of it really means anything to me. As a person, as an individual who knows people that have been imprisoned, who has experienced it herself, who knows the demolition, who has seen demolitions, who has lived this experience, still means nothing to me. What it does, it overwhelms me, okay? We can't overwhelm people. بالآخر, we're humans. Decision makers, they're humans. The Western world, humans, as flawed and as destructive as it can be to our cause, they're humans. So we need to start agreeing on that. And that means being able to speak in that language. I don't explain, for instance, to my nephew, who's 10, the dynamics of Palestine the same way I would explain it to, or speak about it with my sister, who's 10 years older than me. The same thing happens here. We don't speak about Palestine to the region, the Arab world, the same way we speak about it to North America, the same way we speak about it to Latin America. كل إشي وله خصوصياته. Everything has its particularities, and we need to be confident enough and do our homework to start addressing it within that context. Don't expect people to speak your language and understand your language. You need to also speak theirs. And this is something we have a conflict with, because as Palestinians, we're constantly told, well, you need to be better and you need to speak better. You need to engage in this way or that way. And it's very patronizing, but we need to also look at it as not speaking their language per se, but translating our own to fit into theirs. I can't speak to someone who only understands Spanish and Arabic and expect them to understand. What I need to do is meet them halfway. If we both speak English, let's speak English. Is the point to أركب راسي or showcase the reality, or is the point to really engage the global community? So we have to feel engaged so they can feel engaged. And in order to do that, remaining apprised. There's a problem in that we only read news that's about what's happening in our bubbles. And by bubbles, sure, I'll extend it to what's happening in the Arab world. Masr, Urdun, the Gulf, Syria, Algeria, the people we relate with. We need to go beyond. Let's ask what is happening in China? What is happening in Japan? What is happening in Russia? What is happening in Cuba? What is happening in Mexico? What is happening in California, where during the Trump administration, they were having children in cages, children. And this is America, the emblem of democracy. In order to, the good part of being apprised is, how do you expect an administration like Trump's, who's putting children in cages in their own country, to do anything about adults here in cages? This is why it's important for us to read more, to look more, to examine more, to learn about other realities. And this is what it means to move beyond exceptionalism. This is what it means to be active agents in the world. Because if we're not a humanitarian cause, yes, but then what are we? A political cause? Sure. What does this mean beyond? We can't give slogans. We can't just give talking points. Is the main conclusion of understanding the contextual dynamics that we navigate. And this allows you to know your reader, your viewer. Yani if I know what the CNN is covering, it's also a reflection of what their readers want to read or what their viewers want to see. Because in the end, كل واحد they're confined to their context as well. So if you understand that on an international level, you can frame your messaging more effectively. You can let it mean something beyond. فهلا I want to kind of have a short group discussion of whoever wants to join in and speak. But my question is, what is happening now on the global level, okay, that is impacting Palestine? And what are the global dynamics that Palestine is impacting right now? So think as an active actor, not just like passive actors. And as we think about this, I want you to think about previous efforts in advocacy and in media. What were your successes and what were your shortcomings? And do you see a pattern in that? So I want to delve into that. Is I حدا بحب to give a point, raise your hand, or just jump in. I actually think, Ilya, come on, you can contribute to this from your experience at AJ Plus, and how you have to frame the stories within their larger pictures.
مظبوط. بفكر انه احكي بالعربي قبل الانجليزي، كيف بدكم؟
I think as you wish.
اوكي. بفكر انه في نقطة كتير مهمة حكيتيها بالبداية، اللي هي انه احنا الفلسطينيين يمكن شوي متطرفين كيف بنقدم حالنا. يا اما بنقدم حالنا على اساس انه احنا ضحية على الاخر ومنبكي ولازم كل العالم يحزن علينا، او الصورة الثانية انه احنا ابطال وجبارين واحنا نتحمل كل شيء. معنا هاي الصورة الوسطية اللي هي انه احنا بشر، عنا الابس والداونز، هاي اللي احنا بنعيشها. احنا بنكافح وجودنا او مقاومتنا او كفاحنا للحياة واللحظات اللي احنا بننبسط فيها قد ايه مهمة تطلع على الإعلام، وقد ايه تكون ضرورية صورتنا كإنسان، لا كضحية ولا كحدا جبار. بظل كل الأشياء اللي بتطلع حاليا من خلال شغلي، أنا بفكر إنه قد ايه مهم القصص الإنسانية ما وراء الأرقام. يعني أنا من لما بلشت أشتغل مع وسائل إعلام دولية ولا مرة حكيت رقم بدون قصة. لازم يكون في قصة، لأنه الناس ما رح تشوف، حتى لو حكيت لها في 2000 شهيد ما رح تتأثر إلا إذا حكيت لها لو قصة شخص واحد من هدول الناس. ففكر قد ايه مهم نركز على الجانب الإنساني. وبتفق تماما بكل شيء ذكر على موضوع انه مع كل هاي الازمه العالميه وجودنا كفلسطينيين كيف بده يكون موجود. انا برايي من خلال تقديمنا كانسان والقصص الانسانيه، بدل ما نركز على الارقام، وكمان على الجانب اللي ببينه يا اما كضحيه يا اما كجلاد، عفوا كابطال كجبارين.
حد ممكن بده يحكي؟
أنا ممكن أحكي إذا
يس.
نحكي عربي خلاص ولا كيف تحبوا؟
أظن الكل بفهم عربي. هلا أنا I'll keep going in English بس whatever you're comfortable with.
أوكي. إحنا يعني أحد تجارب اللي هي تقاطع التجربة الخاصة عندنا مع قضايا عالمية، اللي هي إحنا لما أول ما بلشنا نشتغل على استرداد جثامين الشهداء بال 2008 كنا نتوقع إنه يعني هاي هي التجربة الوحيدة اللي بيكون فيها اعتقال لشهداء، يعني من خلال مقابر الأرقام أو مقابر جماعية أو حتى جوا الثلاجات. كنا نفكر إنه الإشي زي ما أنت وصفتي كيف إنه هو إشي استثنائي جدا، وهو بخص بس الصراع الفلسطيني الصهيوني وكذا. هلا مع التجربه وبعد ما تطورت الحمله وكذا لاحظنا انه مش بس انه هذا سياسه الموت هاي اللي هي اعتقال الجثامين مش بس كان موجوده في اكثر من نظام في العالم، في اكثر من جغرافيا وفي اكثر من موقع، كمان كان الحملات المشابهه لحملتنا اللي هي حملات بقودها اهالي الشهداء، امهات الشهداء، الثكالى يعني زي ما بيحكوا، اللي كانوا يطالبوا بجثامين ابنائهم. اكتشفنا برضه انه يعني موجود كان باسبانيا بفتره، موجود بقوه كان المكسيك هيك حملات، في امريكا اللاتينيه، واكتشفنا بسوريا برضه كان في حمله مشابهه. وهذا يعني كان زميلتنا بدور من القدس عملت دراسه مرتبه عن التقاطعات هاي. وبهمنا هلا مثلا احنا بعد ما يعني اكتشفنا هاي الامور واكتشفنا عمق التجارب السابقه، انه كيف ممكن نعمل الكونكشنز هلا اللي كيف ممكن برضه اللي انت وصفتيه كثير مهم، انه احنا بالناريتيف تبعنا بالديسكورس كيف ممكن نجند او نربط الصراعات هاي المختلفه اللي هي على قضيه واحده في الاخر، اللي هي مثلا هون تحديدا استرداد جثامين الشهداء. كيف ممكن انا ابني الديسكورس الفلسطيني برضه اللي بيقدر يعبر او يوصل للديسكورس اللي في اسبانيا او المكسيك، اللي كانوا في يعني خاضوا نفس نوع النضال ونفس نوع الاضطهاد يعني. فهذا أتوقع اللي كنت حابب أحكي. شكرا
علي.
أعقب على نفس النقطة. حتى صحفيا لما بنكتب شيء أو بننتج فيديو كتير مهم نحطه بالسياق التاريخي. وجودنا أو تقديم قضيتنا على أنه هي استثنائية وعلى أنه كل اللي بيصير معنا استثنائي ما رح تأثر بالناس بقدر ما نحكي لهم أنه إحنا عم نتشارك هذا الهم مع ناس آخرين وهم حصلوا على مثلا حقوقهم بالطريقة التالية، فإحنا بحاجة للتأثير عليكم وعلى صناع القرار لحتى نحصل على حقوقنا بالطريقة هاي. يعني وضعه بالسياق اللي المتصل مع الهموم الأخرى أو القضايا الثانية بفكر كتير مهم وكتير مؤثر زي ما حكى علي.
صحيح. لي أضيف بما إنه بارتيسيبتر يعني لهذا
أكيد. بس في رواد صح؟
يحكي قبلي ولا تفضل أستاذ؟
شكرا. الحقيقة هو كيف نقدم حالنا يعني في كثير نقاط مريم حكيتي فيها منيح، على أساس إنه هل إحنا ملائكة ولا شياطين؟ يعني إحنا شعب زي كل الشعوب، لا إحنا شياطين، فينا من طرف الخيط هون لنهاية الخيط هون. فإحنا شعب تحت احتلال، هل إن الحق نقاوم الاحتلال ولا ما إن الحق نقاوم الاحتلال؟ إذا أنتم كنتوا تحت هذا الاحتلال هل لكم الحق تقاوموه ولا ما تقاوموه؟ النقطة الثانية المصطلحات اللي تستخدم. يعني هل هي كونفليكت؟ هل هو صراع ولا في احتلال؟ يعني احنا مش بنتكاتل والله على شجرة زيتون وعلى شجرة ليمون، في احتلال قائم وهو احتلال كولونيالي استعماري إلى آخره. مصطلح settlement or colony برضو نفس الشيء، يعني لأنه السيتلمنتس بالنسبة للعقلية الغربية هي إنه أوكي مجموعة ناس هيك راحوا على أرض مهجورة واستوطنوا فيها، لكن هو مش هيك فعليا، هو إنه بسرقوا الأراضي بيصادروها بدون أي وجه حق وبيستعمروها وبطردوا أهلها وبيهجروهم من الأماكن. نقطة إنه العنف ولا عنف، يعني في البداية كنا نحكي عن العنف ولا عنف، هلا صرت أحكي الكفاح المسلح وغير المسلح، armed struggle or non-armed struggle، لأنه الكفاح المسلح حتى لو مسلح غير مش العنف، لأنه العنف هو اللي بتمارسه ضد ناس مظلومين وضعاف ما عندهم مش الحق. فالإسرائيليين بيمارسوا العنف وبيمارسوا الإرهاب، لكن المقاومة حق مشروع. وبالتالي عشان هيك يعني لما قامت اليو اس ايد بحط التقرير انه في بعض المؤسسات او الحركات الفلسطينيه ارهابيه، نرفض. لما الاتحاد الاوروبي حديثا برضو ضاف هذا البند في المشاريع تبعته انه لازم توقع على هاي شو، برضو لازم نرفض، لانه احنا بنرفض انه تجريم حقنا في النضال كونه حق مشروع حسب كل القوانين والأنظمة وقرارات الأمم المتحدة وغيره. فليش بتجاوزوا هاي الحقوق اللي بيحكوا عنها وبتجاوزوا هاي القوانين اللي بيحكوا عنها عشان يقدمونا كإرهابيين؟ فبالتالي في حق مشروع بالكفاح المسلح، لكن كمان تفرج الصورة إنه يمكن 99% من الشعب الفلسطيني ما ناضل بحمل السلاح، حامل قاوم بصموده حفاظه على هويته، على تراثه، على إرثه، على إنسانيته حتى. وإنه هذا الصراع مش بين اليهود والعرب. كمان هاي نقطة مهمة جدا إنه دائما نحاول نحكيها. إحنا فلسطين فيها مسلمين وفيها مسيحية وفيها يهود وفيها سماريين وفيها دروز وفيها كل هذول الناس. فبالتالي هي مش بس للمسلمين لحال ولا للمسيحية لحال ولا لليهود لحال، هي لكل هاي الفئات إذا كانوا من هون، بس واحد من أوروبا ولا واحد من هنغاريا ولا واحد مش من المغرب حتى وإلى آخره، ومش نفس الحق إنك تكون والله فلسطين هاي لليهود وربنا وعدها لليهود. لا إبراهيم عليه السلام كان يهودي، ولا حتى يعقوب كان يهودي عليه السلام، ولا إسحاق كان يهودي، ولا حتى يعني بلا أشد يهودية بموسى عليه السلام اللي أجى من مصر. فكمان إذا بدنا نأخذ التاريخ والتسلسل التاريخي إلى آخره، كمان في شغلة. النقطة المهمة اللي حكوا عنها الشباب كمان هي كيف إحنا نحط حالنا في المآسي اللي بتصير حوالينا كمان مع الناس. يعني ليش بلاك لايفز ماتر؟ ليش الهنود الأمريكان الأصليين سكان أمريكا الأصليين they matter؟ ليش المسلمين في كشمير ولا في بورما متر؟ واحنا كمان our lives matter. احنا كمان يعني ما بنحط حالنا في مجال اقوى او اكبر اعلى من الناس، احنا ناس من هذول الناس المظلومين واللي لنا الحق بالوجود والحياه. النقطه الاخيره اللي حاب احكي عنها هي فلسفه الموت او الحياه. يعني كثير ناس، يعني أنا من الناس اللي كنت محظوظين درست في فرنسا، رجعت بعد 9 سنين بعد ما خلصت الدكتوراه وفكرت إن فلسطين بس بتستنى فيها حتى أنقذها. فلما أطفال يقولوا لك إحنا بدنا نموت عشان فلسطين، يا أخي لا، إحنا بدنا نعيش عشان فلسطين. ولما يجي الموت أهلا وسهلا، يعني ما عندناش عصا سحرية على أساس هيك، لكن فلسفتنا نعيش عشان فلسطين. إنكم تكبروا تحققوا انجازات، ولما يجوا الوقت انتم يا اولادنا اللي تمشوا في جنازاتنا مش العكس. فلما نحكي انه ما في اي اب او ام في العالم بتمنى يعيش اليوم اللي يدفن فيه اطفاله، واحنا مش خارقين للعاده، احنا بنتاثر لما نشوفوا اطفال بموتوا او اي حدا بموت بنبكي عليه، لانه خساره انه الواحد يفكر انه بس بالموت ممكن نحل اي مشكله. فبالتالي زي الناس احنا بنحب اولادنا وبدنا اياهم يكبروا، وبدنا نعطيهم كل الفرص عشان يكبروا ويعيشوا عشان فلسطين، وهم اللي يمشوا في جنازاتنا مش العكس. فمش فلسفتنا نموت، فلسفتنا نعيش، فلسفتنا فلسفة حياة. ومش متعودين. يعني لما نقول تعودنا، لا، بنرفض ان نتعود، لانه ما في اي انسان مفروض يتعود على الظلم، على الاحتلال، على الاستيطان، على مصادرة حقوقه آخر.
صحيح. بس هلا انا بدي احاول ارد اجيب الكونفرسيشن. هلا اظن احنا كلنا على نفس الصفحه من هاي الناحيه. هلا الكونفرس سهيل رح ارجع لك كمان، بس بدي ارد اجيب الحوار على انه اوكي هلا we all know these things, but the question is how do we humanize, right? How do we not normalize our lives? How do we move beyond like the living or the dead? So I just want to give an example before I come to you, Suhail, of the cemeteries. So I had written a story in 2019 about how Israel controls the Palestinian bodies, living and dead, and it's about withholding Palestinian bodies. For the way we, like, me and Ilya, we were just speaking how, you know, to humanize, that doesn't mean to prove our humanity. We do not have to prove we are people that bleed. No. This is high, it takes us down a slippery slope where we show videos, very ugly videos of the violence being taken on our bodies. So humanizing can be something as simple as what I try to do here, where I opened the story about my uncle. And I spoke how his wife and children washed his dead body. They gave him that final hug, and then they buried him. They shared their grief. They were able to cry. And then I moved to the withholding of the bodies. So I started off showing what a big deal it is to bury someone, to grieve, to hold someone's body, their lifeless body. And then I moved to kind of speaking about the reality here. And this is what humanizing means. It means going beyond. Another point, language, conflict, استعمار, violence, non-violence. Sometimes we focus way too much on this. That's why figure out the purpose of your message and figure out what you're willing to compromise. I have had to compromise the word colonialism many times in my articles, but in the end, it didn't serve my purpose. If we want to change the discourse, begin changing the discourse. That's going to work on as an under level. That works when you're speaking with a journalist, when a journalist is interviewing you, make a point. Be brave and make a point. Say, I know you probably will not include this in your report, but there is a problem with you not saying the word colonialism. Inadvertently, they're likely to quote you. The quote will end up in the piece. And this is a step forward. So it's looking, ما نصارع حالنا to prove a point is what I'm saying. Sometimes we can be a little more intelligent in terms of our advocacy purposes without compromising our messaging goal. And we have to differentiate between short term and long term. And I think this is something Israelis are much better at than we are, even on the level of coordination. And that's why I wanted you all to introduce who you are in the beginning. Because for me, the international journalists, the bureau chiefs, whether New York Times or Reuters or BBC, they tell me, Maryam, sorry, and I don't have any Palestinian quotes because about 3 days trying to get in contact with someone. The Israelis, very coordinated, 15 minutes I can speak with Benjamin Netanyahu. Okay? So this is something that's important. And that's why I say always beyond, humanizing beyond, language beyond, normalizing with statistics, Suhad, look beyond. Everything is a big deal. Everything is a big deal. The one body today is as much as a big deal as the one body tomorrow. The big deal isn't that it's 300 bodies. That's not our story. Your story is that it is always abnormal. Do not normalize it. And that's why we say don't focus on the statistics. Does that make a bit more sense for everyone? Suhail, خليناك to wait a little bit longer than expected. But you're on mute.
هيك كويس مسموع. Okay. Should I speak in English or Arabic?
As you tell us, we mixed it today.
طيب يعني أنا شوف بدي I'm gonna mix my talk. شوف بدي أكون شوي قاسي شوي وهارش يعني معلش نتحمل حالنا إحنا الفلسطينية. شوفوا أنا بقول إنه إحنا شعب غير واقعي، أصبحنا غير واقعيين في طريقة إيش بنتوقع الإكسبكتيشن تبعتنا من العالم، الأبروتش تبعنا للعالم، بنتوقع كل الناس لازم تعرفنا وتعبدنا وتحكي إنه أنتم الفلسطينية يعني موجودين عفوا يعني للتهابة بس تحت الإله يعني، وانه احنا ممنوع حدا يعني يحكي عنا او يعني يناقش في قضيتنا، وقضيتنا هي القضيه الحق. قضيتنا القضيه الحق هي من وجهه نظرنا، ولازم نعرف انه كل شيء في الدنيا وجهه نظر. يعني انتم عارفين شو بيحكوا one man's terrorist is another freedom fighter، هيك بيحكوا، هذا شيء مزبوط. يعني احنا بنشوف حالنا على حق واليهود بيشوفوا حالهم على حق، وكيف ما بدنا نلون قضيتنا يعني القضية مش واضحة زي ما بنفكر لكل الناس. وخليني أحكي لكم إشي، شكرا لكل الداعمين في العالم، شكرا جدا جدا. بس أنا بدي أحكي لكم إشي الصراحة يعني وبدون زعل، يعني اللي بدعمونا في العالم ما عندهم أي تأثير بسوى بشكل عام. يعني أنا حكيت بدي أكون قاسي، بس أنا بحكي لكم المظاهرات اللي بتطلع، الحاملين اليافطات، الصراخ وكل الكلام هذا مش له إفكت في الحقيقة بالواقع السياسي والاقتصادي بشكل عام. يعني إحنا كمان نعترف إنه في عنا أخطاء، إنه إحنا فوتنا كثير فرص على مدار السنين الماضية. يعني إحنا كانت الدنيا متاحة لنا بشكل أكثر لحد 2009، من يوم ما بدت اللي تسمى ثورات في الوطن العربي من 2009 وإطلع، فقدنا كثير من الدنيا إحنا في العالم. خلينا أحكي يعني كيف يعني اللي شوفوا اللي بصير في سوريا واليمن والعراق وليبيا، يعني اشياء بدي احكي لكم اياها يعني. وبرضه انا عارف في ناس مش راح تقبل الحكي، بس بدي احكي لكم الواقع وانا عايش هنا وشايف بصير اشياء، او صار اشياء اقصى جدا من اللي صار في فلسطين، وعمره ما صار في فلسطين هيك اشي. انت حكيتي مريم عن موضوع المقابر والامور هاي وتهيومنايز الموضوع. انا مع بس انا بدي احكي لك شغله، اذا بدي احكي قدام ناس على موضوع المقابر، نعم في عندنا موضوع المقابر وإشي غير انساني وإشي غير يعني مقبول باي شكل من الاشكال، بس الحقيقه خلينا نحكيها، احنا ما عندنا مقابر صار عندنا او يعني على الاقل اخر 50 سنه اشياء مثل المقابر الجماعيه اللي في ليبيا والعراق وسوريا. يعني عندنا الناس ما اندفنوا فوق بعض هيك بكوام بحفر ونضب عليهم بالجرافات. احنا ما صار عندنا يعني احنا لما بدنا نروح نحكي قدام العالم على مقابر جماعيه مثلا جنب اللي صار في كوسوفو، يعني احسن لنا ما نحكي في الموضوع، ما نحكي. انا عارف، انا فاهم.
في 48 يا صديقي.
يا سيدي اسمع، انا عارف التاريخ الفلسطيني بالنقطه، ما انا عارف، فاهم عليك، بس احنا مش هذا هو الحوار. انا بحكي لك انه احنا منا نتغير في اسلوبنا، الدنيا بطلت مواتيه لنا زي ما احنا يعني بنتوقع. وفي إشي كمان خلينا نكون واضحين بالنسبة له، إحنا بنحكي عن الأدفوكسي قدام العالم، إحنا ثبت وآخر هذا الإشي بين السنة هاي إنه إحنا فشلنا على الأقل في خلق جبهة دعم عربية، يعني على مستوى العرب المسلمين معنا إحنا فشلنا. والدليل التطبيع اللي عماله بصير وكل الاشياء الفشل اللي عماله بصير. لازم نكون أكثر واقعية. سوري أنا ما بدي أستولي على الحديث، بس يعني أنا بحكي لازمنا أبروتش جديد ونكون أكثر واقعية. سوري.
لا فأنا راح ميلينيا هلا راح أرجع لك، بعدين نرجع نكمل البرزنتيشن. أنا بس معي 40 minutes دايل، بس بدي أعمل نقطتين مهمات. الأولى اللي هي we have to differentiate between advocacy efforts directed at policymakers and advocacy efforts directed at civil society. Advocacy directed at civil society, you will not see its impact until 10 years from now, when they become engulfed in decision making, okay? Look at Alexandra Cortez at New York, AOC. هاي من قبل كان ينحكى معها about Palestine, but she only just got into a position of decision making. Same thing with Ilhan Omar in the States. The same thing with people like Biden or Jimmy Carter. You work with them before. So the advocacy impact on a level of policymakers, when we engage with civil society, you will see it in the future. You're not going to see it now. The important thing is making sure we survive until, a little change comes. But advocacy on the level of decision makers, especially in the Arab world, this is where we mess up. لأنه one, again, differentiate. البحرين is going through its own revolution. The تطبيع from Bahrain, the تطبيع from the Emirat does not represent the people. And this is where we have to differentiate. And you always have to keep in mind what is done can be undone. If history taught us anything, we know what is done can be undone. That should not dissuade us. We fall into despair كتير as Palestinians, which is why I think our narrative focuses a lot on victimhood. We fall into despair very quickly. بدها نفس. يعني حتى the Jewish narrative is that they returned after 3,000 years. يعني شوف النفس. Okay? So we need a nafas. And I think this is how it moves forward. The point of Kosovo, the point of other struggles, this is why we shouldn't compare. Never compare. Illustrate something as it is, not as it is in relation to other places. Okay? لأنه this is going to make you fall also into the Palestinian exceptionalism. Sure, Kosovo might be worse than us, but we're worse than places than, I don't know, Maldives or Cyprus. يعني هاي بتصير suffering Olympics. It's the same. It's the same thing the Israelis do with us. لا, Palestinians suffer, ما احنا we've suffered. Let's talk. So we shouldn't fall into it.
مزبوط. أنا بتفق تماما. يعني أنا مش مع موضوع إنه إحنا كل قضية لها خصوصيتها. وضعنا كتير مختلف عن اليمن، مختلف عن سوريا، مختلف عن لبنان، مختلف. كل محل له خصوصية. بس إحنا وظيفتنا كفلسطينيين نتخصص بالرواية الفلسطينية ونقدمها بأفضل ما يمكن عشان نعمل الأثر اللي إحنا بدنا إياه، لتصير عنا هاي الكولكتيف ناريتيف، بدل ما إحنا نركز على المقارنات إنه لا وضعنا الحمد لله أحسن من اليمن، أو إنه لأنه إحنا عم نخسر بشر.
بس عفوا هو لازم كمان مرة نكون واقعيين شوية. الدنيا ما كلها بتشتغل لمصلحتنا. الظروف بشكل عام في الدنيا عمالة بتتغير بشكل سريع، والدنيا ما راح تستنانا. الدنيا
ولا حدا كمان بيشتغل بس لليمن، ولا حدا كمان بيشتغل بس لسوريا، ولا حدا.
بس الامور كلها بتتغير بسرعه. الامور كلها بتتغير. انت حكيت عن AOC هاي والهان عمر وهيك، هذول اوكي ممكن بعد الترم الجاي اذا ظلوا في كراسيهم كمان. يعني انت عارف انه احنا ما عمالنا بنعمل إشي لدعمهم.
جيب الحوار على الادفوكسي. أنا معاك، أنا كثير معاك، بس أنا purpose of this workshop is how can we overcome. أوكي؟ هلا AOC وهيك sure، بس هلا مثلا في البايدن هاريس كابينت في عندك هاي ريم عودة اللي she's Palestinian essentially.
بس بلا مؤاخذة بدي أحكي لك إشي. البايدن والهاريس اثنين من أكثر الناس عداوة للPDS مثلا.
بس خليني أكمل.
يعطيكم العافية. أنا حاسة الكونفرزيشنز كتير عم بتكون سبيسيفيك، وحاسة شوي لازم نبعد لورا، وكيف قالت مريم بدنا ناخد نفس. فاي ثينك لازم نطبق هاي الريكومنديشن على هاي الكونفرزيشن وناخد نفس شوي. بذلك بحب أحكي شوي مداخلة صغيرة. حلو نكون واقعيين 100%. This is the way to life, to be realistic, not too optimistic, not too pessimistic. بس الحكي اللي عم بشوفه هلأ أنا شايفته مش بس realistic، شوي pessimistic. مريم حكيتي نقطة كتير مهمة، وأنا هاي اللي كنت بدي أحكيها على قصة الادفوكسي. الادفوكسي هو مش إشي واحد وبمشي على الكل. إحنا مثلاً عنا local advocacy، عنا international advocacy للEU in general، advocacy للEU parliament members. فإحنا ما بنفع نقول إنه فشلنا بالادفوكسي بشكل عام. This is a pessimistic point of view 100%. إحنا على صعيد الجراس روتس عم نبني advocacy جديدة، لأنه اكتشفنا كيف ما قالت مريم إنه it starts with these small members who grow into something and develop، ووقتها بنشوف الإفكت. فإحنا although maybe نفشل على صعيد الدبلوماسيين بالadvocacy، بس بالgrass roots وadvocacy with the people و those who have a say يعني that might grow into something. لا honestly we're doing a good job. في room of improvement أكيد ما في شك. بس إنه والنقطة الثانية تبعتي على قصة لازم نفهم إنه في perspectives في الدنيا وبعرفش إيش. أوكي لازم نفهم في perspective، بس في نوع perspective اللي هو مفروض علينا اللي مش مفروض نتقبله. يعني لما نيجي نحكي هاي الجملة إنه one man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist، هاي sorry بس مش مقبولة بتاتا. لأنه ليه ما البرسبكتيف يكون one man's terrorist is another's soldier, national soldier؟ ليه نحط الفريدم فايتر تبعنا على مثابة التيرورست وما نحط الإسرائيلي offense forces, occupation forces, soldiers على مثابة التيروريزم؟ إنه أوكي في perspective، بس إحنا بنقدر نبني هذا البرسبكتيف علشان يكون واضح للناس. مش نتقبل البرسبكتيف ونقول أوكي هو فريدم فايتر ممكن تيروريست. لا، مش كتير هيك التقبل لازم يكون. لازم يكون في شوي من البرنسبلز والمبادئ الواضحة تبعونا نفرضها. عادي مرات ما أكون متقبلة حدا يقول لي تيروريزم على ولد صغير برمي حجر. كتير طبيعي إني أكون completely مش willing to open to this perspective. مش لأني عم بحس بمشاعري كفلسطينية، لأنه common sense، لأنه justice، لأنه كل هدول الكلمات اللي حطوها براسنا إنه لازم نتبعها هي هاي الكلمات اللي إحنا لازم نستخدمها. أوكي ما بنحكي suffering و emotions كتير، بس مزبوط إحنا عنا أشياء unique بالPalestinian case that we can use, so why not use؟ مش عم نعمل الفيكتيمز وبليمينج وبصر إيش، بس we have strong points من هاي النواحي that we can use. وهنا المنفرق where to use it. أكيد ما I won't use it مع الدبلوماسية اللي هن عائلهم political كتير، بس I would use it مثلا مع الجراس roots والmovements that also believe in هدول الكلمات الjustice وبعرفش إيش هيك. فبس هذا تعقبي.
Thank you. Actually, thank you so much for that, Milena. I'm gonna go back to the PowerPoint because I think this is a great transition to the next point. So as these discussions are very important لأنه بدي إياكم برضو تطلعوا كل هذا so you can put it on the side when you're doing advocacy. And this means differentiating between needs and wants. So you want the world to be differently. You want a little more impact. You want to highlight the stories by doing justice. But sometimes our need is differently, right? We need to have the story highlighted. We need more support, let's say, for BDS in the US. هون بيجي إشي اسمه gradients, right? Measuring impact. If we're going to measure our advocacy indicators or impact, we don't have proper measurements. But if we're going to measure it on a large scale, we're always going to see us as failing. If we're going to measure it on a smaller scale, I will see that in places like the US and places like Europe, حتى لو في increasing attacks on BDS on like decision-making level, in the universities, on campuses, more professors are speaking out. حتى those that were Zionists are too يعني, they're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be too attacking. So there are the little successes, and these are things we need, not necessarily our wants, but we need. And this is where we have to differentiate between what we need from our advocacy efforts and what we want, and how you can just reconcile both of them. And this is how you can speak. You just pointed a point that sure, we can't use language, you know, like the justice, the freedom, high sensational language with decision makers. But I would actually say, even though it's counterintuitive, you absolutely can. And for me, a lot of the successes I have seen from my own experience, with the experience of other collaborations and advocacy, was when we used it. We took the diplomat as a person and we looked them in the eye and we said, we know you are contained within your sphere. We know that you can't use this language, but it doesn't mean you can't hear it. It doesn't mean you can deny it. We make them feel, or we make them recognize that they too are trapped within this diplomatic field, and it doesn't go over our head. This way, نكسر هبتهم. Okay? First of all, you make them recognize that we know you are with your limits, but we also know that you have a bigger purpose, quote unquote democracy, quote unquote equality, quote unquote equal rights. Okay, this is your language, mine is justice, freedom, etc. They're not very different. You just can't use it because you are limited, imprisoned mostly within that diplomatic sphere, but it doesn't mean you cannot establish it within your avenues. فهون برضو is what I mean by differentiating between need and want, differentiating between advocacy with policymakers, advocacy with civil society. ما هيش يا طقه يكسر مخه. It's not left or right, it's moving. Look at movement as the goal, okay? It's you and your efforts. هلا أنا my area of research, academic research, is Israeli studies. So I study the history of Zionism and the impact of Jewish diaspora on political implications. If you learn anything, it's that they were so fragmented as a political movement and as just a movement, Zionism. اللي كان بده إياها spiritual, اللي كان بده إياها economic, واللي كان بده إياها political. هلا بالآخر هيمنت political Zionism, all right? But they were in fights with each other. Ben Gurion went and bombed Jabotinsky's ship with weapons لما كانوا بدهم يجوا هون in the 40s. Jabotinsky is the founder. He's considered the founder of the army. فبرضو يعني let's be kinder on ourselves and our failures and our fragmentations, and let's look at it as a whole. The success of these big movements, these political movements, is the whole. It's not the parts. This is where you differentiate and see where they reconcile. And this is important when you speak with anyone. And it's important in your gaining your confidence to speak about the things that matter to you, but knowing how to do it. And this is what recognizes successful advocacy. And diamond come back to what is your purpose. If you don't know your purpose, you're not gonna know your indicators. You're not gonna know how to do your designing your campaign or designing your media, or finding the experts. So that's why I want us to keep coming back. We keep getting stuck in debate. Is الفلسطينيين قدروا يحرروا فلسطين by speaking to each other about what we should be doing. اتحررنا كان already 70 times, okay? But our issue is that we need to start doing. Not speaking about what we should be doing, but doing. يعني I'm someone that used to say a lot, Ya Allah, we need to work so much more on our advocacy. We need to have so many more experts. And I was like, Maryam, just start doing. Start putting your baskets, sharing your stories, sharing your successes, doing it. It's gonna domino effect. You're not gonna see it hella, but you will see it later. Or maybe not. we might not see it. It shouldn't stop us from doing. And this is a huge component of advocacy. لأنه it is one of the most difficult والmedia aspects to penetrate. في عندك politics, في عندك advocacy, في عندك academics. هدول considered quote unquote the intellectual elite that help change social dynamics. So we need to engage better with each other and ourselves. فهلا which stories, I'm bringing it back عنا على فلسطين, وكل واحد يفكر لي with the respective organization and what they like to highlight. The stories that make you happy to read, okay, or to see gaining visibility. How do you find them? So هلا it might seem counterintuitive. You might think you have to follow the mainstream media in what the common stories are. It's like, oh, wow, everyone likes to talk about dancing in this way, so I should do it. No. Or everyone's talking about Palestine now because of the elections. Are they going to happen or are they not going to happen? So I should find a story that's related to that. And I'm speaking about Palestine specifically. No, go against, okay? Maybe right now, وقت election talk, everyone's speaking about the election, بس يا عمي في عمو أبو أحمد في الحزب في رام الله, who is just a complete cynic, who has such immense humor, who is literally just trying to live the simple life. His story can gain us more coverage on the reality of Palestinians than any story perhaps on what Palestinian thinks about the election. Going to explain, and this is what humanism means. Humanism also means not showing us as perfect. Like, this is someone that's completely detached from the politics. So I start speaking, I pitch a story about him on how he's navigating life, who and why. When I used to write stories about protests, okay, أنا كان عندي إشكالية glorifying, heroizing of Palestinian protesters. So when I started writing at some point a story, it's actually still on hold and being edited. But I wrote a story about being a young girl in Nabi Saleh and going to protests, and how as 17-year-old girls, our only concern was, are our legs shaved? Because if we get shot there, we don't want to embarrass ourselves. And it's honest, it's completely honest. We're young girls who are 17 in the end at a protest. It shows the complexities of being human. Yes, hala, you might think, what does it do for advocacy? What does it do for Palestinians? On the immediate level, maybe not much. On a long-term level, when people start reading stories about a child who's 17 who got injured, they'll remember, oh, wait, this is a child. Maybe he didn't want to, or she didn't want to be there. Maybe really what they cared about is, oh, are their legs shaved, because they don't want to get shot there. And this is what we mean about showing the complexities. Hala, the second thing is in navigating your story, we're so afraid of criticizing ourselves, okay? One of the main things that Americans with Western, and I focus on the West halla, which I'll come back to in a bit, but one of the things that we focus on as advocates for the Palestinian cause is it's the fact that we're perfect. We're not. لا يعني, okay, yes, we have Hamas and we have Fatah and we have PFLP and we have little ones in between. Take it, critique it, and highlight it. The emblem of any democracy in the world is that they have many parties. Why is Palestine any different? Why is that used against us? Okay, take it, critique yourself, and reclaim it. And this is one of the important things, is that we keep also showing ourselves as incompetent. And that's not okay. We need to go beyond that. But the first step is looking at yourselves. Yes, we're not perfect, accepting it in any of your advocacy efforts. Anna, in every talk, every single talk I ever gave, whether in the US, whether in Europe, whether here regionally, Mariam, what do you think about Hamas and Fatah? Is there a prospect for reconciliation? I'm like, prospect for reconciliation, that makes a great headline. That's the extent of reconciliation. That's the only thing we can gain from this talk. But what's more important is, why do you care so much about this when right now we're looking at your own countries and you say, yes, we are so democratic, we have multiple parties. Why are you taking that away from me? So our ability to self-critique will allow you to advocate better, okay? We keep showing Palestinian prisoners also, for instance, as heroes of the Palestinian cause, or that they're perfect. And yes, they're sons and daughters and wives and husbands and friends and family, but they're flawed. X in prison can be the absolute crappiest, and excuse my language, person in the world, okay? Acknowledge it, and then ask, does this still warrant their political arrest? This way, you take the argument, you recognize it, and you refute it. And this is important in any advocacy effort, because they're always going to be thinking how to refute. Think about it before, in any pitch, any talk, any conversation you have, and refute it immediately. Don't give them the chance to open that box. Just refute it and move on. And you get dragged into what just happened with us. We get dragged into a debate, right? That establishes nothing more than us speaking our opinion. And this is why I like interactive talks. I like participatory talks. These things, you see it visibly. You see how it played out in front of us. And that's one of the important things in selecting your stories. So this brings me to how to frame it, all right? So this is where you learn, are you speaking about an experience? Are you speaking about our culture to critique something or to give it coverage? If it is to critique something, this is one way to go about it, is that I'm talking about Palestinian dabke, so I can highlight how Palestinians can't travel. This is a critique story. Okay, so recognize it, because it's gonna help you how to thread the dabke in it. But if it's a coverage story, then you're speaking about, let's say, Palestinian culture and dabke and how this falls in the larger framework. It means Palestinian dabke as an important aspect of our culture. You want to bring back al-maqlouba as Palestinian, al-falafel as Palestinian. كمان شوي they're gonna take al-musakhan. You know, things like this. So know the difference between using your story to critique the reality or to give coverage for who we are. And these are very two divergent paths. Yes, bimshu bidakhalu ba'd, they're very different. And to be able to do justice, not go on tangents, you have to know your purpose, if it's to do this or that, and move with it. And this brings us to opinion or news. So I started off in media as reporter, journalist, and this is news. That means I had to, as hard as it was as a Palestinian, I had to take myself out of the situation. I had to cover it with the nuance. I had to, quote unquote, use the words like the Israeli forces, Israeli defense forces, or things like that, that I tried to find alternatives for, like Israeli forces. And that's why I moved towards opinion pieces more. It gave me flexibility, but there's pros and cons for each. Opinion pieces, I can speak a lot more flexibly, still an opinion piece. News seems a little more credible, but this means you have to provide your resources or your information to the dot. Make sure you have your information right. Someone told you he was shot at 2 p.m. Call 3 other people. Make sure he was shot at 2 p.m. So these are the differences. In opinion pieces, I'm not really stating things that happened. I'm stating my opinion of what happened. And in advocacy, yes, they can be very successful because you're offering a different perspective for people to see, اللي راح يخليهم at least trigger some dissonance in their mind. But it's also not seen as, oh, like the objective fact and reality. Hala, if you want to push news, pitch a news story, this is more effective on the level of policy making, because they want to see the facts, right? And they'll come to their own decision. So this is where you give the facts and advocate in there. Opinion is to sway people. It's to give them the perspective. This is more directed at people who are engaged with Palestine. Yani, a lot of my opinion pieces are read by diplomats that come here, but they're engaged, they're here, they need to know what people think. So know the difference between the two, because you'll know what to use. Policy language, news language, narrative language, who's my audience, how does this matter, what does the different media outlets mean? And I know if I put my piece in the New York Times, it's gonna be يعني قولي majority read by Zionists. يعني I'm gonna open a Pandora's box على حالي, okay? Which means I have to be extra يعني cautious with ensuring my story comes off very properly. It is bulletproof, حتى if it's an opinion piece. But if I'm putting it in Al Jazeera, I have a lot more يعني difference. If I'm writing it in English, it's very different than I'm writing in Arabic. In Arabic, I need to speak the language of what's happening here in my dynamics, right? And for this media outlet, so knowing this. And then this brings me into something we keep missing: regional media versus international media. حكينا عن الوضع العربي هلا. We spoke about it. About the normalization, all of that. One important part, okay, هلا إذا بتتذكروا وقت الانتفاضة الثانية and before, a lot of our media was in Arabic. A lot of it was showing the reality in Arabic. We were very engaged. And that's why there was slightly more support, حتى on a mass level, not even decision making. We have turned our attention to international media. Or not any international media, Western media. وهاي برضو, it gives them extra leverage over us. So we need to expand our horizons. يعني sorry, why can't we publish in Chinese platforms? Why can't we engage with that audience? يعني do we have to keep engaging in American media or Western media? Sure, في language barrier, but في journalists هون that represent these different agencies, and it's our job to establish these connections. It's our job to go to them. They don't have to come to us. And this is how you increase your advocacy, expand your horizons. يعني if it's gonna go, it's gonna get worse anyway, you may as well try. Which means moving beyond the mainstream. Just like we do Palestinian exceptionalism, there's also American or European exceptionalism. And this has, if anything, made our problems worse. And in order to move beyond that, we need to go beyond عقدة النقص, اللي هي we think that they're the only ones with leverage. I'm sorry, for the longest time, everyone thought Britannia was the empire. خلاص, it was the global hegemon. And then that shifted to the US, which means it's going to shift again. Empires have fallen and risen all the time. So you can't just rely on someone to bring about change. And this is what I mean, expanding our horizon. So no, it doesn't have to be CNN. It doesn't have to be Deutsche Welle. It doesn't have to be Financial Times. But these do have their advantages, أكيد. Because you can go beyond, start building these networks. وإحنا as Palestinians sharing. We don't share. إحنا كل حدا that has connections or contacts wants to keep it a secret. And that's something I never understood, because I'm constantly saying, oh, I know this editor, or I know this person, let me put you in touch. Because I know for me, and I'm confident enough, we're usually insecure about our resources. I'm confident enough that if Hamle gets that coverage, it doesn't mean any lesser. It doesn't mean I have less of a chance of getting coverage for something else. No, the story is worthy by its own merit. So moving beyond, how do you start moving beyond هاي closure اللي we're facing in our advocacy? Each organization needs to find its expert. I'm gonna use which example? JLAC with us. Who's your expert on the home demolitions? Who is your expert on the legal front? Who is your expert on the economic consequences? Know them very well, have their contact lists, have the internal navigation. إحنا internal systems تاعنا below zero. We need to develop that. So if you hear about a journalist covering the economic impact of demolitions, ترفع الخط على أبو محمد, or I don't know who, I just throw names, and say, hey, I'm gonna put you in touch with this journalist, and go for it. Yani me and a few friends, we each know who's an expert in what. So I have journalists calling me from yani BBC or Dutch television, and I say, I'm sorry, I'm not an expert in here. I admit it. I don't have to prove myself or pretend to be an expert. And I pass it along to a colleague. And I just rely on that colleague's expertise because the message beats the person. So know your niche, or outline it, or have that always updated, and provide it to different organizations. Give those contact information. If you ever hear about this conference or that conference and you need an expert in this, this is your person, and we'll be more than happy to facilitate. So start small and it will snowball effects. Hala, in some instances, it's gonna be better for you to learn how to write, to be a writer at your organization, find your writers. Sometimes it's better to be a pitcher. Hala, I facilitate between both. Sometimes I pitch the stories, I find editors, I find reporters here, and I tell them, hey, I think you might be interested in this, and I pitch it. Other times I know ما حدا رح يكتبها unless I do it. So I just take a breath and I do it, because I genuinely believe, and I know I can give it more justice, because I live in Ramallah and the story is about Ramallah and it's about the youth of Ramallah, for instance. I know I can do it. So I write it. But you also have to know when to be a writer and when to be a pitcher. You don't have to write for outlets. You can write for your websites. You need to also start amplifying your websites as credible sources. Start giving training on how to fact check. What is evidence-based research? And how do you frame that within a narrative? But either way, if you want to be a pitcher, if you want to be a writer, if you want to do it on your website or in an interview, do your homework. Move beyond the sensationalism. Don't rely on, I'm Palestinian, I know my reality, I know how much this affects us, so I'm just gonna go do the interview. No, don't be afraid to ask the journalist, don't be afraid to ask the policymakers you're meeting or the civil society. Hi, can you give me some biography about the delegation that's coming? Know who's coming, know what kind of information they'll be looking for, and be relevant. If the journalist wants to interview me, I usually say, give me your questions. I need to know what questions you're gonna ask so I can give you the best information possible. But they do that. So this is gonna help you. It's gonna help you not be stuck in a moment in an interview, masalan, or in a conference, and just rely on, well, Palestinians deserve 1, 2, and 3. Yes, we know we do. We know we do. But again, people are just human. They don't just want to hear what they have to do. They don't want to hear why you're worthy. They want to hear how, what, where, how come, the history of it. How did we get here? How can we move beyond? So it's transitioning. It's giving the story, just pieces of the puzzle, which means doing the grunt work of media visibility. That means if you're pitching a story, call the people whose house was demolished, prepare them that I'm going to be sending journalists your way. Do your homework, move away from the victim and hero extremes, focus on stories of, okay, we're not heroes, مثلا, because we built a well, حتى لو they demolished. No, this is empowerment. Palestinians are teaching you how to work with limited resources and still functioning. Empowerment narrative. Instead of victim narrative, obstacles narrative. What are the challenges? What are the barriers? How can we mitigate this? Know when to put yourself. I'm someone, if you see me, even in this workshop, I go between myself experience and I go between the broader, more factual information. Same thing if you're at a conference, same thing if you're talking. I differentiate. Should I share my experience, my personal experience? I know with policymakers, I never insert myself, ever. I don't speak about myself as an individual because I know I will risk, if I even get any empathy or sympathy, it will be directed towards me as an individual, not towards the cause. And that beats my point. خلاص. أنا شو استفدت for them to be friends with me? No, I have enough friends. What I want is the larger picture. So be intelligent enough to know when to put yourself in the story and when to keep a distance, or in your narrative in general. So the writing the actual story is a bit more difficult. And I think this actually would need a workshop on its own. But I wanted to insert it here so you can start asking yourself these questions at your organization. طيب, you want to write a story for your website. Begin asking, what do we need? What kind of information? What kind of resources? Do we need writers, Arabic speaking, English speaking? Do we need translators to translate it to Spanish for Spanish media? These are questions you have to ask yourselves. How do you do it? Do you do it as a collaboration together? Do you have a focal point, content writers? Do you want to solicit someone, call a journalist that you know, and then ask what are the common mistakes of people covering this angle. Yani, I know the common mistakes of covering Palestinian protests is the sensualization, is the calling it riots, is the calling it, is the decontextualizing. We make it seem like, hey, the Palestinians are in the street and yelling, no context. So I can start thinking, how can I override? كيف بقدر أتعدى؟ يعني I can't just name mistakes. I need solutions. So I think about how to override it, and I begin writing that story with those solutions. And then how to find and pitch your stories. Be aware. Be very aware of your context. If you're working in the cultural sphere, know what's happening in every aspect of the cultural sphere in Palestine and to an extent globally. If you're working in prisoners, know what's happening in Palestine, what that means in its history, what that means for the future. Because when you pitch a story, and there are different ways of doing it, and there are courses that you can take. وأنا طبعاً, as a person, I'm more than happy to always assist, if I have the time and capacity, طبعاً, to assist different organizations in pitching. But you have to know how to do it yourself. So you can, يعني صار إشي at JLAC, or صار إشي at Al-Ruwad or at Al-Damir, you need to know how to pitch it immediately. And that means having all your information there at all times. Learning how to work with editors in different fields. One of the hardest things I had to do was learning how to work with the bureau chiefs in Palestine. Every person is their own identity, their own personality, their own needs, their own wants, with their own bosses that they have to work with. So I had to learn how to wear different hats as well. And this is what I meant in the beginning. They're only human. They only can speak one language. Well, yes, that means sometimes we have to do a little extra work. But if we're عن جد confident in the justness of our cause and in the justness of the purpose and message of what we're trying to promote, let's do the little extra grunt work. It's okay. And yani, one of the most things that helps in media visibility are media kits. So it's the media kit is a tool that you establish in your own organization, where you have, let's say you have a film festival. So you make a list of all the journalists that are in town that you want covered or internationally, and you make a media kit. His summary of what the festival is, who the different people are that are joining it, why this is a big deal, what's the point of this festival, and then start sending it out. Journalists also, they're covering 50 stories at a time. They need quick information as well. And if they're interested enough, they'll keep going and doing the extra work. So I want to kind of bring us into a conclusion because we are almost done. But you have alternative options دائما. You can work on blogs. You can make podcasts. You can use Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and create hashtags that make access to your specific organization quick. As Haina, we're learning from COVID-19, we're having webinars. You don't even have to be in the same country anymore. I can be speaking with people from across the world. Use that to increase your advocacy. Have those one-on-ones with decision makers that say, well, we can't come to Palestine. Well, people are giving classes internationally online now. So why can't we have a quick 20-minute meeting? If a campaign with international groups, don't compromise your message, but work with others, extend your solidarity. And one thing that I'm so grateful for is other struggles gave me the opportunity to show solidarity with Black Lives Matter. وأتعلم لغتهم. I stopped calling them protests. I call them Black rebellions because this is the language they want to use. Just like we don't want to use conflict. I have to extend that. The same thing in Kashmir. For Kashmir, I extended my solidarity to there. It is an Indian occupation. Speaking about these issues, مثلا, people tell you, لا, Maryam, we shouldn't say India's occupying Kashmir, will lose them as an ally. Then how can I expect people to say the same about Palestine if I'm not willing to be brave? So campaign with international groups, work together and bring it in. Work on your images that you collect and documentation and your resources. Be efficient, be completely efficient internally in how you're documenting. Hada, if you document, sorry.
Hi, sorry, Miriam, sorry to interrupt you. I just, because of the time, yes. I just want to be aware that it's 12 now. Unfortunately, yes. Actually, I myself have to go, but you can continue the conversation and wrap up as you please, of course. But I just wanted to officially thank everyone for joining, and Miriam, you as well, for sharing such a deep and multidimensional perspective about how to do our advocacy work. And I'm sorry I can't join you for more time.
We have different things and meetings to do, of course.
So yes, so continue, and we will be in touch with you all. Thank you very much, and talk to you soon.
Thank you, Allison.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, so the final point that I was trying to make is be efficient. Document everything that you have your internal data source and database. يعني اجتهدوا في المؤسسات تاعونكم. Have them as accurate as possible so that you're not doubted. I like to point this out also because right now with organizations like NGO Monitor or Regavim, it's these Israeli lobby groups that are attacking Palestinian associations. The way we document our internal work is even more important in terms of advocacy, because all the work that you have done, all the successes that we have done in advocacy can be erased in 1 minute if there's a flaw in any of our internal databases. So I'm gonna actually close on this. And I hope that you were able to get some beneficial information. It is a big deal. Advocacy is huge, but it starts with us sharing this information. فكتير بحب أشكركم على انضمامكم وعلى الجلادة تاعتكم and your contribution to it. وأنا موجودة. I'm gonna put my email in the chat and please, I'll be more than happy to speak more, share my own tools with everyone. بالآخر, we're here to serve each other. So thank you. شكرا كتير.
شكرا مريم، يعطيك العافية.
يعطيك العافية، شكرا لك.
شكرا يعطيك العافية.
شكرا لك، يعطيك العافية.
أهلا. على تواصل. باي.
نهاركم سعيد. باي.
يا سعد.